So I'm going to call to order the May 14th meeting of the District Communications Committee at 7 p.m. under Wallen, Chair of the Triton Regional School Committee. And I'm not going to confirm everybody tonight that you can all hear me because I think we're pretty much good on this. For this meeting, the school committee is convening remotely via Zoom using the information posted on the district's website, identifying how the public may join. If you are personally attending by video conference using your device's camera, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Committee members and administrators, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the district's website with the agenda posting unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording.
It will be captured by the recording.
It will be, yeah.
There's no may.
I often wonder what happened elsewhere that made them put that in the default script that we altered. I'm sure there's an interesting story behind it.
Only imagine, yeah.
So I know we've met by DCC before. I can't remember how we did the introductions previously, but I guess we'll just kind of go in order. So I'm Narissa Wallen. I'm the chair of the school committee. And I don't know, I'm tagging Brian because he's next on my screen. You can just tag somebody else, I guess.
I was going to say, how do we do this? So Brian Forget, superintendent at Triton.
Like Hollywood Squares, Neil Harrington, town manager in Salisbury.
Alicia
Mike
Greco, Board of
Doyle.
Selectmen, Newbury.
Mike Doyle, Board of Selectmen, Newbury.
Damon Jesperson, Board of Selectmen, Newbury.
Paul Mayette, Finance Committee, Newbury.
Warren, Business Administrator with Triton Regional Schools.
Sorry, Maureen Heffernan, School Committee.
Tina Georgia, School Committee.
Ronnie Ray Parrott, Board of Selectmen, Salisbury.
You got Cliff's in there. I can see Cliff. Oh, he's muted.
Oh, there you
Hello.
Hey, Cliff.
Peters,
How's it
Raleigh
going?
Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. I think that's it. We got everybody?
Me,
Hi, Kim Croto.
Oh, sorry, Kim.
That's all right. I
Dave.
throw people off with the seagull, but I'm here. I put my video on.
I was going to say, Dave McGee's here as well. And then,
Yes, I'm here.
I don't know, Freeman, did Freeman introduce himself?
I'm here. Freeman Conlon, Salisbury Board of Selectmen.
I'm here.
All right.
All right. Well, welcome, everybody. And I'm glad to see that everyone looks well. I appreciate you taking taking me up on the request to move this up a week. We've been, as we've been going through the COVID-19 crisis, we've been, receiving updates from DESE and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And we had some upcoming dates on our calendar that we need to make sure that we have plenty of time for discussion for, and, potentially action. So I wanted to make sure that that we left ourselves plenty of time in this. And I think in this day and age, it's better if we touch base more frequently than if we take, some kind of extended breaks in between, since there's so much going on. So that said, we're going to skip the meeting notes because we forgot to include them, apparently. I just realized that.
I was just going to say that. Yep.
Didn't include meeting notes. And I'm going to turn it over to Brian for the COVID-19 district closure update. And I would just encourage you, if you have questions on this, because I know there are a lot of hot topics on here that I've been hearing about from parents and community members, to just feel free to go ahead and ask them now, because I think it's all relevant and it's good to have all that information available.
Absolutely. So I'll just give you a kind of a brief snapshot of where we're at district-wide. And certainly if there are questions that you're hearing or questions that you have personally, please do ask. So we are into the third phase of our remote learning. The big shift as of this past Monday was that we are teaching new content. There are other little tweaks and subtle changes, but the big change is we're moving forward with instructional content. That's very challenging. To make sure that we can provide access to all students for all of that new content. So that that will be our challenge for the remaining 5 weeks of school here. Our teachers have continued to do unbelievable work. I think educators all across the state, and for that matter, all across the country, and have done amazing work, stepping up and living outside their comfort zone, rethinking what instruction looks like. Teachers certainly did not sign up for what this looks like today, but they've been creative and flexible and doing great things with our students. So we are into phase 3. This will keep us right through the end of the school year now. The last day of school, as confirmed last night by the school committee, is June 16th. It's Tuesday. We had school during April break. We went to school the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of the traditional April break, and that pulled us back 3 days from Friday the 19th to Tuesday the 16th. So we will remain in this pattern as we have it today for the final 5 weeks of school. So it's actually 5 weeks from this past Tuesday. Our offices are fully functional, fully operational. I think very similar to your town halls. The majority of folks are working primarily remotely, and then in the offices as they need to be. So obviously there are certain roles in the business office that have to be in more frequently for processing checks and payroll and those systems, and other folks are able to communicate remotely. School offices, the same. Again, they're not open from 8 to 4 as you typically would find them, but they are fully open, and people are responding. People leave voicemails, and we get back to them. So we are fully operational as the towns are. It just looks very different than what people can traditionally expect. Certainly, if you hear of anyone that is having a hard time getting a hold of anyone, certainly let us know. But to my understanding, most people are getting quick and prompt feedback and responses from schools, from teachers, from principals, and from the offices. So all of our custodians, as of this coming Monday, are back to full-time in the buildings, obviously practicing social distancing protocols and working on other projects rather than typical cleaning. So we're getting caught up on some preventative maintenance and other items. And we're working through the challenge now is the end of year, right? So we walked out of school on Friday the 13th of March, assuming we weren't coming back right away. When we walked out, we certainly weren't assuming we weren't coming back at all. So as of last night, it was 2 months to the day that we walked out of the schools, and so everything is as it was when we left. So we're working through a process to get teachers back into the schools, to clean up, do their regular end of year straightening up of classroom, putting away and packing up their classrooms and supplies, and coordinating all of the students' materials and supplies, and at the high school and the middle school, the lockers and the living beings that are now probably stuck at the bottom, rotting and smelling wonderfully. So all of that is a work in process. Our goal is to have everything organized by the end of the month of May for pickup, and then have everything bagged and tagged, and have an orderly process to have curbside pickup for all students. That's preschool right through the high school, so that we're not bringing students en masse back into the buildings this school year. So that is the plan. Certainly there'll be information flowing in the coming weeks, in the coming week or two, I would say, out to families in regards to a specific time, because it'll be very, very structured and very restrictive of when we'll have folks through. The other big change is graduation. Obviously, the class of 2020 cannot have a graduation in a stadium like we normally have. We have been playing with the idea of holding it out at Salisbury Beach, so that's now been formally. I wrote in a letter. I talked to Neil Harrington a while back, and then formally put the request in writing after speaking with the school committee last night to the selectmen in Salisbury. My understanding is there's some general belief that it works well. So we're going to get creative and have a drive-in graduation out in the Hunt Memorial lot out at Salisbury Beach. So we have grandiose visions of a parade starting in Rowley, going all the way up through Newbury, up 1A. Obviously, that takes a lot of coordination, so we'll see if we can pull that off between the police departments. But we're doing our best to make sure, and I give huge kudos to Patrick Kelly, the high school principal, who's the brainchild behind all of this, an actual ceremony, so that kids actually walk across a stage. And the thinking is students and families will stay in their cars. they'll parade in, process in, organize around an elevated stage that we would set up, and then have a ceremony, actually have a technology to be able to broadcast it into the FM frequency, so people tune in their cars and hear the ceremony. The only people that are getting out of their cars are the graduates as they walk across the stage, and then the valedictorian and salutatorian would obviously do their speeches. So going to be a ceremony that's light on lengthy speeches and really focused on just that act of the students walking across the stage, which is, as we surveyed parents and students and spoke to the class of 2020, that was the most important thing, was that opportunity to be all in the same place, even though they're in cars rather than the bleachers, but be all in the same place and have that opportunity to celebrate together. So that's our plan there. We are bumping it out 1 week just strictly because of planning and logistics. We need an extra week to put that all together. So it's planned for Saturday, June 13th. So I think, I guess the one little last thing I will say is the big question, and you're hearing about it. Dr. Fauci tipped it off, was it Tuesday when he testified, and basically said, I'm not, don't assume you're going back to school in the fall, kids, was the short of his message. So we've got lots of work to do to figure out what the fall is going to look like. There's actually a task force working group that was just announced today by the commissioner that includes a group of, you name it, superintendents to the owner of the bus company we use, John McCarthy, to teachers unions, to you name it. All the various organizations are going to get around a table. It's going to be a big table. It's about 30 people. So their job is to clearly establish guidelines of what can and what can't happen over the summer, and then what the goal will be for opening schools in the fall. So in short order, we will not be running summer programs, except for the special education extended school year program that is required by IEPs. So as Dave was mentioning last night to the school committee, the advice is to plan two approaches. One is purely remote, and the other is a blend. I don't suspect that we're going to have restrictions loosen up overnight, and we're going to be able to bring any kids back to any kind of traditional instructional situation over the summer. So I fully anticipate that it will be a primarily remote experience that would continue for those students over the summer, and then our focus will be turn strictly and energetically to the fall and what that will look like when we return. So I think that's the kind of the highlights. If there are questions that you have, I would certainly be happy to answer them. And obviously Kim, Dave, and Kyle are all here. We got all four of us here tonight. So if there are any questions, we ready, willing, and able to answer the question.
So there's no expectation at this point that you won't reopen in the fall. I only bring this up because California state schools have already said they will not be returning to the classroom next year.
Yes. So no, I will say that the Massachusetts has been slow to release, right? I mean, we will be, and as of Monday when things start to, was it 4 phases, the first of 4 phases, we will be the slowest to release restrictions, but by the same token, I think the governor and certainly the commissioner was the slowest to put restrictions in place as far as long-term commitments. Look at very much as chunks and phases. So I think I would say to you today, there's no way that we're going to have what looks like a traditional fall. There's simply no way we can do that. So it will vary something between a full remote model, which exists now, which I don't believe that there's that we're yet convinced that it has to be 100% fully remote. I think it will end up being more some type of a hybrid, and whether that's partial days, every other day, a blend of in school and out of school, so that we're not bringing all students in at the same time. At a minimum, we're fairly confident cafeterias will not look like they look this year. There's no way we're putting 150 students in the cafeteria at the high school together, 200 students. So there will be no large school assemblies. Buses can't be packed full of 57 kids. So it's, the whole 2 or 3 to a seat, that's going to be looked at. So there's lots of things that we have to figure out. And we have to do that balanced with the reality that we're not going to have a lot of extra money to do this. So, I think our best hope is that any federal stimulus money looking to a new package that would take into effect next year would help the states be made whole as far as the aid that they're giving to cities and towns. I certainly don't think there's going to be extra money over what we've already assumed. So it's there is money. Kyle's done a lot of work. There's money through MEMA that I'm sure at the towns you can do the same thing that we'll be able to claim, and anything related to installing plexiglass in our offices or things like that would be reimbursable through MEMA. We are expecting at face value, the figure is $219,000 for the first round. That the CARES Act is coming through as Title I dollars, or I'm sorry, it's coming through under the Title I allocation. But there's some language in there that we usually have to share. Well, for ease of and simplicity, we'll say we have to share a little bit of the money with private schools. So if we have a handful of students that live in Newbury but attend a private school, that proportionate share has to be offered to the private schools and to collaborate with them. The language in the CARES Act makes it much more, it gives them a whole lot more of the money than what we originally understood it to be. So we're unpacking that a bit because that would mean we wouldn't get as much money as we thought we would. But again, that's this year. It's currently available. We intend to. We believe we're okay this year. The school committee did take a vote last night on our recommendation to apply $200,000 of our excess and deficiency strictly as a fail-safe. That last night was the last opportunity because we have to certify it to you and then give you 45 days to hold a town meeting if you don't want to let us use the E&D. So that unfortunately is something we've done every spring. So that happened, but we don't believe we're going to need that money. So the hope is that we end this year whole, and that stimulus money, that CARES Act money, would carry forward into next year. And it remains to be seen what we would need it for. So we know there will be added expenses, so there won't be a ton of other extra money to help offset that.
And it remains to be seen if we can have a town meeting within 45 days. So.
Exactly. Yep.
I could just add one quick thing on to Brian's, because I know this has been a lot of discussion on the school committee side, is that we had, I think, pretty firmly resolved to try not to dip into excess and deficiency to fund our budget. But because of the current circumstances this year, we have to cover ourselves, and we don't know when unexpected costs might still be coming down the road. In discussions with Kyle, who fortunately has private finance background, he is pretty confident that this is not going to negatively affect our bond rating. And you're meeting with Moody's next week, right, Kyle?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
So we'll have the conversations with Moody's up front about this, but just like Narissa mentioned, their E&D is there for a reason. There are a lot of good uses for it and various reasons why you'll want to tap into it. And where we were knocked on our credit rating in the past, that was because it was used to balance the operating budget, whereas this is certainly a special set of circumstances. So just like you mentioned, don't anticipate this having a negative impact on our bond rating going forward.
And the other thing, Brian, if you could just touch on meals, because we were able to expand
that
again.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so that seems like a distant, that started literally right away back early in March. So Lucinda Ward, our food service director, as you know, put together a reimbursable meal program. So it's full, all of the meal costs are fully federally reimbursable. So it started as a Salisbury community-wide qualification. And working with the Boys and Girls Club, they were creative and they organized volunteers to deliver to students in need in Newbury and Rowley. We delivered via buses and curbside pickup at Salisbury Elementary since the very beginning. That expanded and it allowed us to also do a curbside pickup in Rowley. So as of, I believe it's been 2 weeks as of this past Monday, again, all of the meals are prepped in Salisbury. And then we have a couple of the Rowley's food service folks who get down to Pine Grove, and they're all grab and go meals. So anyone from birth to age 18 can grab a meal, and we're not carding anybody. So if someone who's 18 and a half grabs a meal, it's okay, and it's federally reimbursable. So we have a quick survey, literally just to get total numbers and for planning purposes. But at last count, there were close to 400 some odd individual students who are participating in that. And that's 2 meals a day, 7 days a week. So on Monday, they can pick up either curbside pickup or by the bus route can get 4 meals, so 2 breakfasts and 2 lunches for Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday pickup for Wednesday and Thursday, and then Friday pickup for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that can only continue through June 16th. We, as part of that offering that program, we'll run a deficit in the vicinity of $120,000 in our food services program. Obviously, there are other savings. We're not running the buses, so we're signing a contract that reduces the cost for buses for this year through June. So we've been working. Kyle's done a great job working those numbers so that we can offset areas we knew we were going to run deficits. And I believe I mentioned that to you last time we met, because we refunded parents for full day K tuitions, and we reimbursed parents for user fees, for athletics fees for the spring, and for preschool tuition. So we knew there were areas we would run deficits, and we were able to find savings in other areas because of the closure to close those gaps. But the food services program will run the biggest gap, but it's been a phenomenal program. Unbelievable the amount of work that's been done to provide meals, and Lucinda is, certainly the ringleader, but there's so many. All the food services staff and the folks at Our Neighbors Table, Lindsay Haight and the gang, and Jim Keenan and the gang over at the Boys and Girls Club have done yeoman's work to feed a lot of families during this closure. So tremendous. Thanks for reminding me to mention that, Narissa. Yeah.
I have a question. Last time I remember you saying there was an issue with the buses and the contract for the buses. Did that get canceled, or did you, because legally the school district or any government agency can't pay for a service that they're not getting?
Yep.
What happened with that?
So I don't know if you want to jump on this, Kyle. So we're going on DESE recommended guidance is where we're at now.
Correct. So just as you remembered, Mass General Law prevents us from paying for any services that were not rendered. So where the school buses are not currently in use transporting students, we cannot legally pay our existing contracts. So what DESE has guided us to do is create a contract amendment where we'll be paying a reduced rate over to NRT for readiness, where basically they'll be, once school's put back in session, the buses will be ready to go. Also, the amendment will stipulate that they continue to pay their drivers, where we have a valuable relationship with our school bus drivers in the district. We want to make sure that they're taken care of as well. And we were able to negotiate down a 22% discount, and we're fine-tuning the last details of that contract amendment right now. And if you've heard from other cities and towns or districts in the state, that 22% discount is right on par with other bus companies who are still employing their drivers. There are some districts who are paying far less than that, but their drivers have been laid off. So to answer your question, we're in the final steps of completing that contract amendment.
Thank you.
Alicia, do you need someone to deliver you a light bulb or two?
I'm the dark shadow. No, it's the way the light is. It's the halo. It's my wings in the back too. As soon as the sun goes down, it'll be all better. I get all the lights on in the house. I think if I went way up now, even still.
Any other questions for Brian on kind of where we are right now? I mean, I can say Brian and Kyle and everyone else are probably working, I don't know, what are we at, like 80 hours a week, trying to make sure that we keep up with DESE guidelines and sit on all the conference calls and, get everything up and running. And yeah.
I don't think it's any different for any profession, but I think anyone who's in education right now, I see Ronnie shaking her head, the amount of time, and I will say any special educator, the amount of time, and our social workers, the folks that have literally from 6 a.m. to sometimes 9 p.m. at night, just because it's when they can connect with kids. And, those kids who we're trying to reach and you can't go to their house and ring out of bed and say, we need to see you. It is 12, 15-hour days for some of these days. So it's certainly, I think I'm done saying it now. Every day I never thought I would say that, but okay, I'm finding myself learning something new and saying something new. But 9 weeks in, it's feeling oddly normal, which I will say, it's going to be weird to put a tie on and go to meetings in a room with other people.
Well, that's not going to happen for a long time.
I know. You mean the tie? I'm never putting a tie on again.
So what's going to happen to these families after June 16th?
So, we certainly, Lindsay Haight at Our Neighbors Table does unbelievable work. And there's a whole network of folks. I say Lindsay because Our Neighbors Table is such a big organization, but there are so many local organizations in each of the towns, whether it's, associated with churches or other groups, private groups. So we're going to do our best to connect families with, families who we know are relying on this. And there are families, I would say there are families who are benefiting from this. And there are families who are absolutely relying on this, these meals. So I think, we're going to do our best to make sure that those that we know are truly relying on this to put meals on the table, that we can connect them with resources. We played with the idea of trying to continue it. The issue came down to, for us, it becomes non-reimbursable. And that deficit that we've figured out how to cover of 120,000 would probably double, if not larger than double, over the course of the summer. And we just don't have the funds to backfill it. So there are definitely other resources. We've got different folks connecting with the families and doing the best. Lucinda certainly is a resource. I know Kim's been involved in various discussions with different groups, trying to make those connections for families.
And they also, the state, Alicia, is also,
that's right.
The state is offering, without any application, they're basically just going to show up at the doorstep of any student who has free and reduced lunch. They're going to get a card that will allow them to buy food, use at the grocery store for certain items. So we're trying to get the word out so that when these cards do show up, including our EL students, that they understand the use and how they came to be and that they can use them. And I think that one of the main reasons is the fact that many of these kids who are families relying on these lunch and breakfast meals, they will have access and have some food security even over the summer. And I have to say, My Neighbors Table, I can't say enough about them and Lindsay and the incredible outreach and pulling everybody together to make sure we all have resources and we're reaching and using each other's resources to fulfill that need throughout the community for every group of students and families. So I do feel good about that. That's what's happening. So.
Well, that's good to hear. Thank you so much.
Yep. I'll still say in Salisbury, I know all the selectmen have been working with our town planner and all of the social service agencies. There is money in CBDG money that our town planner is amazing and has been really working. In Our Neighbors Table has been at that meeting. We've been meeting the last couple of weeks, at least once a week. So I know that she is trying to find and she's good at it, finding some good chunk of change to go to Pettingill House, Our Neighbors Table, Boys and Girls House, and the YWCA to help provide social services, at least to the residents in Salisbury. But I know Our Neighbors Table helps everybody.
That's great. And the SNAP card that Kim was mentioning, the SNAP benefit is it's a community-wide for Salisbury that goes to everyone. And then in Rowley and Newbury, it's anyone who qualifies for free or reduced lunch gets the card. So all of that data came through our office as far as the students and the information. And those are, I don't know if they're in mailboxes yet, but they're in process of being delivered from the state.
Well, that's good.
All that to say, though, there are families that we should and still will be worried about this summer because circumstances have obviously changed over time for a lot of people. So, any other questions for Brian on that item? Seeing none, moving on to the fiscal year 21 budget and the approval process that we went through. Brian, are you taking this one as well?
Sure. Yeah, no, I think, the hope tonight is we find ourselves in uncharted territory in regards to, we're now sitting here on May 14th. Usually two town meetings are done and we're approaching Salisbury town meeting. And as Damon mentioned earlier, it remains to be seen. I think we're now at two of you at June 22nd and one on June 23rd. It remains to be seen if that's even possible, that in 40 days or so, that we'll be able to gather large groups together. So our hope in getting everyone together was to get a sense of the towns in your process. Narissa mentioned earlier, if our budget isn't approved by June 30th, we move to what's called a 1/12. I know there's been some information shared with some of you in regards to the some guidance from DESE. It's not a separate budget. It's not another structure or confine that or construct that we have to do. Literally, if we don't have a budget for July 1, we submit what we approved, the school committee approved, in our current approved fiscal 20 budget. We submit it to this commissioner, and the commissioner sets a rate somewhere between our current budget and what the request was. Obviously, it's the current budget, and then recognizes contractual obligations for teachers and things like that. The months of July and August, there aren't any contractual obligations. So the months of July and August are usually more manageable. We've never slipped into a 1/12. There are regional districts that it is the regular and routine occurrence that they're in 1/12 budgets well into the fall of every year. So, certainly there's benefits to going to 1/12 in regards to the unknowns. But by the same token, there's a lot of unknowns. So our hope was to get a sense of where the towns are. We're supposed to notify the Department of Ed by June 1st if we know or believe we will end up in a 1/12 budget. So that's a deadline. Certainly, if we let them know on June 5th, they're not going to say go away. But we technically have no authority to spend as of July 1st unless we have a 1/12 set, or two of the three member towns have met at their town meetings and the town meetings have approved our budget. So I know just to get a sense of where you are as far as your timing, is the budget that was presented, we had discussions early on and there were various approaches, but I don't think anyone loved the increase, but people were feeling like it was something that the towns would support. And so obviously that was, the school committee passed the budget March 11th, 2 nights before the sky fell on March 13th. And so we just thought we'd get around the table, the screen here, and just get a sense of where we're at in regards to the town. So I don't know, Neil and I spoke just because we've been talking about other things, graduation, and he's involved in negotiations. So in regards to where towns are at, I don't want to put Neil on the spot, but as far as where people are at in regards to moving our budget forward, that was the hope, is to just hear from the towns and thoughts about where you're at.
Well, I'll start. We're not planning on a 1/12. I think our time would be more productively spent planning how we can hold our meeting on June 22nd, because we're moving ahead with getting our budget balanced. We're pretty close at this stage of the game. Big question mark, for us will be what the DOR will allow us to count for revenues for next year, but we're going to put numbers in there and pass a budget with what we think is a responsible revenue projections. And then if we have to change it, we'll go back in the fall and change it. As you know, the final budget only needs to be approved before you set your tax rate, which doesn't come till, in our case, after the fall town meeting. So we're planning to go ahead. I think we can find a responsible way to hold our town meeting unless something dramatically bad happens between now and June 22nd.
Go ahead, Damon.
So we've asked the town administrator to prepare for a 1/12 budget, just because we're not sure that we will be able to safely hold a meeting at that time. And, we don't want to jeopardize people's health just to move forward with the town meeting. we're very hopeful that we have the testing and the tracking that we need to safely hold a meeting and start to open things up. But we are starting our contingency planning at this point.
I'm curious, Neil, where were you planning on holding it?
Well, we don't know yet. I mean, normally we have it at the elementary school, but you know, some communities have been creative. I know one community in Western Massachusetts that had it out in the parking lot. Everybody spaced their cars out. They had a quorum of 100 people, and they picked a nice warm day, and they got their meeting done in you know, a short amount of time, and everybody went home.
Wow,
Really,
that's
I
the
think-
first drive-in I've heard of. I know West Newbury is moving forward with renting a huge tent and doing it outside.
Yeah, well,
But-
it's the same basic thing. I think
Yeah.
that if you get to the 22nd of June, the odds are, unless it rains, you're going to have a fairly warm day, and we could make arrangements. I'm sure. I think our biggest issue will be getting a quorum, whether or not 125 people will show up, which is our quorum number.
Hmm.
We can't change that at this stage of the game. So, you know, I think as we get into the early part of June, if it looks like there are no other impediments to having our town meeting on the 22nd, we'll try to be creative and get it done.
Our quorum, I believe, is 40,
Really?
I think. Damon, am I right?
That's
I
low.
think it is. I think
Yeah,
it is 40.
Mike.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We've taken people off the green to meet quorums years past. So it's very low.
Only at 40. Holy cow. You could almost have a town meeting with the group here. Wow.
So I don't know. I just, I believe, Brian, did the town administrator talk to you about location?
Yeah. So we're all set. So, yes. So Newbury is holding theirs. Currently, the plan is to use the high school auditorium. So the high school auditorium seats 800 people. And I know you'd be thrilled to get 800 people to show up, but certainly with the hope that you get 100, you can put a fair distance between people using the full auditorium. So,
I don't think we'll get 100. I'll be lucky to make the quorum of 40. But at least that's enough room that people can sit far enough apart.
away from-
Families can
yeah.
sit together.
Yep. Yep.
Cliff, what's Raleigh planning on doing?
Rowley is planning on moving ahead with the June town meeting, hoping for relief from our quorum requirement of 100 from the state legislature. But, you know, we'll see about that. But we're planning on doing it in June.
Where are you thinking of holding it? In the same place?
Pine Grove Schools, where we always do. It's a big room. I don't think we'll get a lot of people. I mean, I think we barely get 100 if we're lucky.
Yes.
on a non-COVID day.
It's often phone a friend night in Rowley.
What?
I said it's often phone a friend night in Rowley. We need a quorum to get going. Can you come down and help us out?
Right.
I should talking about the water supply. Sorry, Bernie.
Just a quick note in the planning for that, in case people hadn't seen it. The North Andover Town moderator has put together an app that will help you determine if you have a certain number, how large a space you need to socially distance them. And he's actually marketing it with one of my former students. So I can pass that information on if anybody's interested.
Interesting.
Sure.
Never heard. I think one of the issues for me with holding a town meeting with the bare minimum is just the representation is always skewed at town meeting, and to skew it further, I don't think serves the community very well. But that's a personal opinion, not a feeling expressed by my board.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm certainly not a selectman, but I think that's the struggle, is that balance between that reality, which I agree, with what that means in not being able to move forward and keeping your town moving forward, you know. So that's a tough dilemma.
Well, these are unprecedented times, so I don't see that there's a big problem. You do it once. I mean,
I like an idea of holding it on the beach.
Lots of room to spread out.
Yeah,
I mean-
nobody will hear anything because of the wind, though.
Yeah,
But-
harder to count the votes.
You all have to have it within the confines of your town, correct? Right. So it's only Newbury that could use the high school auditorium.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I've never read that anywhere, but
Yeah, I don't know if it's written down anywhere.
So it's certainly an opportunity. I mean,
I'll
it's
check the town's bylaw.
So Newbury is now the 23rd, and now Raleigh and Salisbury, you're both on the 22nd,
Right.
I believe. But the high school auditorium could be an option because
Yeah,
obviously
I'll look into that.
there's 800. It's 800 seating capacity plus the stage, which the stage setup is way distant from anyone there.
Right.
Parking lot is huge. You could set up multiple entrances, so we could accommodate that well
Right.
to get the meeting to happen if that's something that people are interested in.
Well, thanks for your offer. I'll
Absolutely.
look at that and see if it's a requirement that it has to be in Raleigh.
Okay.
If it specifies that or not.
Yeah.
That was actually something that Rep. Hill had talked about previously, is that currently Mass General Law does require that it's within the confines of your town, but
Really?
there's legislation filed though to waive that because they understand. I know Hamilton Wenham is also working on the same thing because they both like to use the high school, similar type situation.
Right.
And similarly, they can't. That's not the way that works. So,
Right.
but there's legislation in that could potentially affect that and allow you to hold your town meeting outside the boundaries of your town. And also, I believe there are multiple pieces of legislation filed that would reduce the quorum numbers by varying percents, or two varying percents of your current quorum as it's set by the town.
Right. I know that Bruce Tower has legislation filed that would reduce the quorum or allow a town to vote for a lesser quorum, which would be very helpful.
Yes, it would.
So is that a safe assumption that I know there's probably 820 different bills that have been filed all about this?
Right.
Is it? I'm assuming it probably would come through as one package, right? That it would come through as one omnibus
Hope
bill.
so.
And timing wise, I mean, I haven't had any intel on that. Is there, Marissa, do you know from the State House, is there anything
I haven't
in
heard
regards to
anything
timing?
on that. They were working on the voting laws today. I know that, and there's been a lot of discussion about it, but I don't think there's any firm dates on it yet. They're still struggling, especially the House, with their remote process, because 160 members, it's difficult.
Yeah.
So if I could ask just a follow-up question kind of on Brian's here. So hearing from Newbury that you're kind of planning for possibly not being able to hold, but Raleigh and Salisbury sound like you're pretty definite at this point. Is there a point for all three towns where you're kind of reevaluating? I'm sure it's day to day, but reevaluating on kind of the board basis to see if there might be changes in that. I'm just trying to be sensitive. I mean, obviously, like Brian said, Dusty says June 1st, if we need to alert them that we might be in a situation where we would need to move into a 1/12 budget. But, if we're June 5th or June 7th or whatever it is, that's probably still going to be okay. We're just going to get bumped to the back of the queue and be farther down the list as far as when we get considered. But do you have a set schedule as to when you're kind of reevaluating where you're at?
I think for Newbury, we were going to wait to see what Monday brought with the governor.
Right. I mean,
And
I think we're continually reevaluating that until, it happens. So,
I think we'd like to have it done and over with. I think that's.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
think,
I mean,
right. We would too. Raleigh would too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 1/12 budget, I think, is just in case. Poor Tracy.
yeah, it's not, no one on the board wants to delay town meeting. It's simply that we're not going to put people's health at risk. If we've had another surge in COVID cases in the area, we just can't hold the meeting unless we figure out a way to do it, like you guys are doing for the graduation parade, have everyone in their cars. We have not discussed that sort of option yet, but yeah, I don't know I don't know that that answers your question, Narissa, but it's certainly our intention to have the town meeting.
Okay. If I can just ask that you kind of keep the guidelines and where we're at in your process of planning, just so that we can try and cover ourselves and make sure that we're, kind of dealing with it appropriately. We're adding extra meetings to our schedule to try and make sure that regardless of kind of what comes our way, we're going to have at least meeting slots available so that we can get members into a meeting. But obviously, I mean, we're all kind of at the whim right now. The better of an idea that we can have on the district level, I mean, I can just say it from all of us. I think we would just appreciate that so that we can do as much advanced planning as we can possibly can.
I get it. And
It's tough.
we will.
I mean,
It's tough. We will. I'll have Tracy will talk to Brian. If there's any chance that we're going to have to go to the 112th, we'll let you know as soon as we do.
Okay.
Likewise with Raleigh.
Thank you.
I will say I spoke with Tracy, and she certainly is taking the "oh no, we don't want 112th" approach. I think everyone's doing everything they can to not land there.
Right.
So I guess my question. So you talked about the other piece we have to figure out is responding financially to the budget and whether it's approved or not. So we've got a double whammy. Narissa and I were, and Kyle were talking about there was a meeting that was held last week in Hamilton Wenham with the town officials and similar town officials and school officials. Rep Hill and Senator Tarr were both there, and Rep Hill suggested that we should be planning for a 20% reduction in our Chapter 70 regional transportation and circuit breaker funding. So for us, that would be a cut of over $2.2 million, which would not be a slight little cut. It would not be a trimming. And we've had this discussion every year. There's no more supply money to cut. It would just be, large numbers of educators that would go. So I certainly if you listen at the state level, there are folks who think the sky is falling, and I'm not accusing Brad of saying the sky is falling. I think he's trying to prepare people to make sure that any possibility is real here. And they were looking at what happened back in 09, 10, when the ARA stimulus money came through. The hope is that any federal stimulus money, similar to when back in 09, we lost Chapter 70, but it was backfilled with ARA stimulus money. So for ease, we were getting $8 million in Chapter 70. They cut $500,000 out of our Chapter 70. So we only got 7.5 in Chapter 70, but we got $500,000 in ARA stimulus. So we still got the same number in our Chapter 70 that we assumed. Some of it just came through federally. So that's the hope, is that when they say 20%, that it would be, they're assuming without any backfilling, and there's, I believe, growing consensus that there will be more stimulus money coming in federally to help backfill state aid to towns and then directly to regional schools. So we're just trying to balance that reality. Neil, you mentioned that you're moving ahead and looking forward, assuming the balance, trying to get to a balanced budget, assuming the current assessments. So I guess my question for Newbury and Rowley is, do you still see the assessment that was finalized before this all happened as feasible and something that, if and when you gather, whether you're in cars or on the beach or in a school or elsewhere, that this is a budget that we say, okay, this is still the budget you want to put forward?
We still see that as being the budget for FY21.
Okay.
But for subsequent fiscal years, I mean, really all bets are off.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Obviously, this is going to impact our revenues. We don't know how much, but for example, we've already lost the restaurant tax, which is a substantial part, and that's just one example. Excise tax,
absolutely.
Property taxes. I mean, some people aren't going to pay, are going to be late or whatever. But it's going to be hard times coming. But next year we're good.
Okay.
For FY21. Okay. So our intent is to pass the current budget.
Okay.
I think that is Newbury's intention as well. We have, I think that's the current intention, planning going forward as as Cliff said, may be much more challenging.
Yep. And that's, I guess, I'm not asking for a commitment. And it's just that if you were to say to me today, there's no way next year is happening with the number you gave us, it'd be really helpful to know now.
No, I just wanted to throw that in there, Brian.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a reality. People keep talking about, we're, like we said, everyone's feeling good, kind of made whole for 20. We're going to be okay. Promised whole Chapter 70 regional transport. So we'll, we assume we'll have the E&D. We're going to put it forward and it'll filter through again. 21, it's the issue is going to be timing, right? It's the fact that this is happening and unfolding at the same time you all, and we are trying to pass budgets. So it's the timing and then what we need to do to react, because if we're going to, the savings has to be personnel. That's all we have to save that kind of money. If we go into the year and start spending that money, then it makes more and more cuts we have to do to find those savings with unemployment and all that. So we just want to be proactive. For fiscal 22, I can tell you we're already having those discussions. I'm having a lot of discussions up here because there's actually a slide I saw today talking about literally reassessing. We have to rethink how we do it. You fill in the blank for it. Everything we do in education, I'm sure in all of your industries and the work you do, there has to be a rethinking of how we deliver instruction, you deliver your resources, how we provide the product that we provide in our industry. So there's absolutely, to your point, Cliff, absolutely there's a realization that fiscal 22 is likely to be more challenging than fiscal 21. And the only benefit I see there is that we have time to plan. Right? We know now, and it's a whole lot easier to plan now for a year from now than it is to plan right now in the moment, as the wings are falling off the plane we're trying to take off. That's a different thing. So I appreciate you saying that, and I fully acknowledge that is a very fair assessment to make. All right.
Yes. So thank you all for, your input and information. I think one of the other thing, of course, that we have to weigh is the state aid and the school committee. Where I can say that I keep reaching out to legislators. We're gathering as much information as we can. But I think it's fair to say at this point that we don't know that our revenue assumptions are going to hold. We may not know that by June 1st. I would say so we're going to have to make some decisions on what we do with those state revenue numbers. And that may involve, obviously not your assessments changing, but kind of just the budget itself changing a bit over time. I don't know what we're going to hear. It was I would say it was a surprise to go from kind of like it looks bad, but I think the feds have us to we could be seeing 20% hits, and we don't know if that'll be backfilled, but we hope it will be. And I think those are very different messages. Yeah. And even legislator to legislator on the same day, I think, particularly between the House, the Senate, and the governor, it's all very different messaging. So we're going to have to make some decisions on that and potentially adjust the district budget. But those are conversations that the school committee will be having over the coming weeks, and we'll keep you apprised. But we can't assume revenues that we're not going to have. That could be devastating if we get hit. With a significant series of revenue cuts. But we also don't want to underestimate that, because, then we're shorting ourselves. So we're going to do our best work as well as it can be done in the midst of a pandemic, to try and figure out what those assumptions should be for the budget, I think.
And I'm hopeful that it depends on who you speak with, but there seems to be some hope that both sides of the House and the Senate will come together and put something forward in unison. Depends on the day and who you speak with, but we're hopeful that there's something. I think the new deadline for the House side is by July 1st. So that first version by July 1st, we should have a sense. So if that 20% is a possibility, then there should be something that comes out before July 1st that at least gives us a signal to that. Usually it's the governors and a little better in the House, a little better in the Senate. we know this year it's going to be a whole lot worse in the House than it was from the governor. So I think that's for me is kind of a line in the sand where I feel like we will have at least a good indication of what we can expect. The challenge then is that we will be past the 1/12 stage, right? Because we're supposed to let the governor or the commissioner know by June 1st if we need to move to 1/12. So certainly if the 3 towns are holding their town meetings before June 30th and we have a budget, that certainly takes one complicating factor out of the equation.
Message from 978-873.
I thought that was me. I was just like, okay.
So yeah, I guess I agree with Brian. You know, obviously we'll know more as we go, and we'll keep you apprised. But you know, we'll do our best job as the school committee and try to keep you updated as to what's going on with the state of education in our towns. And I think the other piece of it too is, and I don't think it can be understated that we're going to have some catch-up work to do with special education, because there are a lot of services that are designed to be provided in person that can't be provided in person currently. And that if we move to staggered schedules or anything like that, that is definitely going to throw some whammies in our current kind of structure for the district, because that's going to be a really, I mean, we're going to figure that out as we go, right? So we'll keep you apprised, and that's the best I can promise at this point, because we're going to be rolling with the punches just like you are, except I think our punches are going to be hitting us maybe a little bit sooner. So
yeah, I should say the money we talked about from the CARES Act, that roughly 219, again, a portion of that has to go to private schools. We're carrying that into next year under the full assumption that that is our little bit of a nest egg, and in the special ed world it's called compensatory services. So when we're not delivering services required by a documented, a mandated IEP, we have to provide compensatory services. Department of Ed has been great and understanding, and our parents have been phenomenal in understanding that our teachers are doing everything they possibly can. So it's not going to be lock and stock and barrel. We have to provide everything we missed. But there will absolutely be some. There will likely be some, legal costs that we're going to have to put in place. All the team meetings that would have been happening. We're trying to do some of them remotely, but all of the evaluation team chairs that run those meetings, we're going to have to bring in some reinforcements and get those done. Maybe even start them over the summer, and then double up in the fall. So that we see as our kind of nest egg to resolve the issues, which is a good thing to be able to say. We know it's a challenge, and we've got some federal money that will help offset that, and then again move forward with the budget as we can only assume at this point. So
I don't know if you have anyone have any comments or questions on the fiscal year 21 budget.
No, I was going to suggest we move on to the regional agreement discussion.
Well, do we need to have a regional agreement discussion? I asked that.
Well, there was some, I think, reaffirmation of the conversation that we had by email.
Yes.
This is the same one that we talked about before. My board doesn't actually ever believe me when I say that to them. So if you
I believe you.
publicly on the record, and I wasn't entirely sure why it got sent back, if it just had been cleared by DESE after the question that Paul had brought up, or what was going on. So
yes, so that the last iteration that we talked about at the last DCC, when we said that DESE had accepted the language that Cliff and Raleigh's town council Tom Mullen had proposed, that last version that you guys saw was the version that we delivered to the towns after the school committee voted. So the process is that the school committee votes, and then it's very similar to the budget, right? The budget gets voted, and then it has to get certified to the towns officially so that you receive it to move forward with it for town meetings. Very similar process for the regional agreement, in that, we've been having these discussions kind of all along. At some point, when we've come to that final draft, the school committee has to vote it, and then we have to officially deliver it to the towns. So that the last copies that it would have been JR and Tracy would have received are that final ready for a town meeting warrant version.
Okay.
So
They've already been through all three of our towns' legal review, right?
yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. So yeah, so that's all. So to have our attorney go over it again, Damon, is redundant.
Yes,
So
I
the
will.
other two, are all towns going to put this on the warrant for the town meeting? I mean, I know Rowley we're planning to.
Yeah, I think Newbury is too.
That is the plan. We'd taken it off the warrant because Jesse was in review and we didn't think we'd get there in time, but then things have changed. So I believe it is the intention, and I'm going to write an email to Lisa, our town council, and the town administrator as we talk, so that I can clarify what Narissa just said to them.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, our assumption, just based on the regional agreement, it states that once we deliver it, officially have voted it and delivered it to the towns, that it goes on the warrant for the next annual or special town meeting, whichever is coming first. So, obviously we live in unusual times right now, so I'm hoping that we'll have our annual in somewhat short order, but that's where we're at. So, anything else on that? Is that it, Damon? All right. So the next item kind of goes into that as well. This was, I know a couple of people had asked me what's happening with the drop-ins, which we had started doing those, I think it was 2 years ago. And we were doing them as just an open community session in each of the libraries. We were doing one day and one evening session coming into town meeting season. We typically tried to do it after the warrants were available so that people knew what was on the town meeting warrant and were able to kind of intelligently ask questions about that in those three towns. We intended to continue that this spring and expand them to include any questions on the regional agreement, since we anticipated that those would be on the warrants as well. Our proposal right now that we ran it by the school committee last night and wanted to run it here too, is we want to turn those virtual. So they would be an online Zoom meeting, very similar to this. Because of that, they would not need to be in the individual towns anymore. It could literally be, 6 people from Salisbury, 2 from Rowley, 11 from Newbury, whoever happens to show up, rather than feeling like, somebody from Salisbury has to go to Salisbury Town Library for their drop-in. So we're currently looking at the week of June 1st, simply because although in the past we've done it a little closer to the town meetings, that next week is the lead up into graduation, which is it's a feat to pull that off. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts there, and we didn't feel like it was smart to get Brian and Kyle to drop-in sessions when there are so many moving parts in that week. So the intent was to do it the week before, the week of June 1st. Possibly Brian and I had tossed around the idea of Monday and Thursday, and we would do probably 2 mornings and 1 afternoon and 1 evening, or 2 mornings and 2 evenings. We hadn't made a decision on that yet. So I always try to be very careful about things that, provide parity between the towns, and come back and kind of check that with the town boards. I just didn't know if you had any input on that. I feel like we've always said, even if we had it in Salisbury, but you live in Newbury and you're available that date, come and join us then. And I know we've had people do that. I just didn't know if you felt like that was, obviously we want to do the right thing here, I guess. And I wanted your input on that.
I think, given the Zoom nature of the meeting, having it open to everyone from any town whenever their schedule essentially allows them to attend makes the most sense. So I definitely think it makes sense to continue on that with that assumption.
Okay.
I agree.
I would agree too, Narissa.
Okay. Does anyone have any objections to that plan?
No.
Okay. All right. We'll set dates and times then. Sorry, do you have something to say, Brian?
I was going to say, so we were saying 2 mornings and 2 evenings, and then we thought, well, maybe we offer an afternoon. I don't know. Do you get the sense in talking to constituents that people are free in the afternoons, or are they at home working remotely, fighting with their kids about schoolwork, and evenings are still better?
I think with the remote learning, that's probably the biggest thing that's getting into the way that most parents are spending a lot of time with their kids trying to help them. So I would say late afternoon, early evening. And who knows, you might get a morning like before the kid gets up. So a high school kid's not getting up till 11 o'clock. So, you know, you could knock it out in the morning. But I think parents are pretty wrapped up in working with their kids.
I wonder if we maybe do 1 morning, 2 late afternoons, and 1 evening or something. We'll play with that week. Okay.
And I do think a lot of people like me are working from home, so it's 40 hours a week for me, but I'm just home.
I've had so many conversations with parents who both parents are now working from home, and they have 4 kids, you know, age 3, 5,
stress right
7,
up
and 12, and they're like, I can't do this. It's real. The struggle.
I can't
is
tell you
real.
how many meetings I've sat in, and I've had women sitting, and you know, I'm a global company, but we're working from home globally. So this, you know, people in France with a kid on their lap, you know, it's like whatever you need to do, get it done. Just dogs barking.
A ball comes in from off camera, hits someone in the head, and you're like, don't, just ignore that. Just leave that alone. Yep. Just make it all happen. Yep.
So, all right, that's great. Thank you for the input on that. The last thing real quick is setting a next meeting date. Traditionally, we haven't met past May because we're pretty much sort of done at this point in the process. And we just hold off until September before we meet again as a DCC. But maybe I'm overreaching here, but I'm assuming you're going to want to know what happens as kind of our processes move forward with the school committee. And obviously there's going to be some conversations probably around town meeting times, possibly. I didn't know what people felt comfortable with. I mean, we can just say it's TBD, and when we feel the need to meet again, let's set a date, or we can say, let's set a date, you know, 3 weeks from now or a month from now, and kind of see where we're at that point. I don't know how people feel about that.
I wouldn't think it would make a lot of sense unless something dramatic happens to meet before our town meetings are scheduled. But that's just my opinion.
Well, what would we have to discuss if we take it, if things change and we can't hold our town meetings like we plan to, then I think we need to meet.
Yes.
But if town meetings go as planned on the 22nd and the 23rd, what would the need be to meet?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping, well, I mean, there's the other possibility too. I don't know what we're going to get from the state in between. I'm making the assumption here that you're going to, given that all your students are in the district, going to want to have updates on exactly what's happening with the district. So we may have more information in between on if we're going to have an effect on our budget based on state revenues and what that effect would be. I don't know what the timing is going to be on that. And I think that's one of the trickiest things. We have definitive dates right now for your town meetings, but we don't know what's going to happen with kind of state aid and how we're going to have to respond to that.
Well, I think if something changes on your end, drastically changes financially, you should let us know.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I don't know if is it effective to meet this way, or is it just as easy to send a letter? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, I think the key is if we learn anything that's going to change our situation drastically. Sorry, I keep letting Mike Doyle. He comes coming in and out, in and out. Okay, I have 2 Mike Doyles on my screen. Do you all have 2 Mike Doyles? Okay, how did you pull that off, Mike? That is impressive.
He's cloning himself.
That's impressive.
I've been kicked out of Zoom 7 times so far. I don't know what's going on. I keep getting kicked out.
All right, this time you're frozen. Mike left and you stayed. That's good. You did something right that time. Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say if something drastic on our side changes, I can certainly talk to Neil, Tracy, and Debbie, right? And we could say let's get everyone together if we need to. Likewise, I think if anything changes for any of the towns, again, speaking through Neil, Tracy, and Debbie, if all of a sudden it becomes clear, someone was saying as of Monday, everyone's hinging. I feel like every time it's always on this extended closure date, everything hinges around that Monday when the governor is going to announce something new. If we learn in the next 2 weeks that things are going to not drastically change and you won't be able to hold your town meetings, then I think absolutely, like you said, Alicia, then we should meet. So I think we can play it by ear. I'm certainly comfortable with that, and stay in connection with the town managers and administrators. And then I think it's fairly easy to gather the group now, given the circumstances on a Zoom, compared to gathering everyone around a table. So
Right.
I think with a week's notice we could pull something off.
But Narissa, looking ahead over the summer, I think that maybe we might want to touch base at least one point over the summer to determine what the direction the district's going to have to go into
I agree.
Yeah.
in the fall.
Yeah, I agree as well. And I think everyone that I've heard outside of DESE has said the sooner that we have guidance from DESE, the better off we're going to be. But there also doesn't seem to be any definitive timeline from DESE on when that guidance could be out. I don't know if you know anything more than I do, Brian, but listening to that legislative hearing on Tuesday, they were kind of like, yeah, we're planning. Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's how they say. Oh, we have a plan. We have a plan. We're not going to tell you what it is, but we have something.
Yeah.
It's been in the works quite a bit. So, which
Yeah.
I get it. There's a lot of balls to juggle, but there are we need to draw some lines here and just, fish or cut bait. We got to go. We've got to make some decisions and move forward.
Yeah. I mean, technically, I don't think they've even given out guidelines on graduation yet, have they? There was no guidance on graduation. So districts are just doing what they're doing because...
They will not be touching graduation.
Not now. They better not be.
That's one of those you do you, and they're like, that's not us. So, yeah. No,
So
I think,
for graduation, you're not going to have you're not going to invite any of us like you normally do, right? There's not going to be any of that.
wait a minute.
I mean,
Another Mike Doyle is asking to get in. What is going on? So I mean, again, it's all based on what we can fit. So we've got to now work through logistics in the Hunt lot and what we can do. And so, I mean, if town officials and folks want to be there, obviously in your cars. No, we're not filling the stage. We're going to keep the stage. It's a pretty big stage, but we're going to keep it. Patrick and I on far corners, and if Narissa wants to come up as the chair, keep us all 10, 15 feet apart. So we're not going to stick you all in a corner if you want to sit there, but if you want to be there, absolutely, we would love to have you there. So as we can figure out the details, we'll certainly share the details with you.
That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be a drive-in, not a drive-by.
Where's Hunt? Where is that?
It's
Hunt
the lot as you're going out to the beach. So as you're coming out Beach Road, right on the right, the main public lot there. You enter by the skate park. So Patrick Kelly, our high school principal, has wonderful, grandiose visions of a sunset graduation facing the marsh, but we're not renting a stage that has studio and concert lights and everything. So we have to figure out all the logistics. This is going to be a really amazing ceremony on a dime. So as we figure out the logistics, we'll certainly let you know.
You can do it. We've run some theater workshop productions on doilies and tablecloths, sheets that have been wonderful.
Yep. And thanks to Neil and go ahead.
I was going to say, sharpen up your seamstress skills there, Alicia.
That's right. We'll take costumes. I don't know what are going to sew me. We'll do a theme-based. Someone actually suggested that the right graduation is one of those blow-up, the big dinosaurs, that if we get costumes for everyone, they can't get near each other. So that was actually a legitimate suggestion that someone made without a smile on their face.
We happen to own a blow-up T-Rex, Brian. So if you want to go that direction, we can provide an outfit.
I'm always good for a dare. Make it memorable.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone will be fit in 2020 soon.
Yeah,
exactly. That's true. That's true.
Yeah. So
well, I commend you guys for doing something, trying to think outside the box for this, because my daughter's graduating from college and they're not thinking about I mean, we're taking a ride to Salem tomorrow. Would have been the day that she
Mhm.
graduated, and they're just doing a drive-by, and there's no plans to do anything for them.
Yeah,
So-
and it's the big discussions have been, do we wait? A lot of colleges are using homecoming for a graduate ceremony, and then now they're kind of pushing it out to next year, thinking that the homecoming might not happen. Our discussions have been, and my own daughter, who's a senior in high school, is it good to celebrate in the moment in a different way, or is the traditional ceremony so important that it's worth waiting for? And it's just, I can speak for my own daughter and many other seniors, both in college and high school, that it's just like we want to celebrate the moment and move on to college and life after high school, or if you're graduating from college, hopefully you have a job by the fall. So yeah, we're gonna do our best. And again, huge props to Patrick Kelly, who's this is his brainchild. So I will give him huge credit, and thank you to Salisbury and Selectman and Neil and all the folks who will have to lean on to help make this happen.
Absolutely.
And we'll be publicizing, if we can pull off the parade, we'll publicize it quite a bit. So we'll hopefully make sure that everyone, I don't think we can do it too long because it could be 230 cars. So it's a big deal to organize, but if we can do 1A through Rowley into Newbury and then into Salisbury, that'd be great to let people know they can come get on the side of the road in their car and honk their horns and wave and do something special for the class of 20.
Yeah, that would be really, really nice.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess what I'm hearing from that is that we'll keep you updated either through town managers, administrators, or I can, always email if we have big things that are changing. But if there are things that are going to require, I think, a lot of questions and answers or input or further discussion, then we'll try to call a DCC meeting like a week out from where we're at and make sure that we're touching base in a meeting like this at least once over the summer so that we can have a more in-depth discussion and catch up on all the little odds and ends that never seem to get caught in an email. Yeah. All right. That sounds good then. And thank you all for coming out tonight. I know, we're keeping you from your beds, so because nobody else has anything else going on, I don't think, at this point in pandemic land. So I don't know, stay well, and we'll hopefully see you all soon. Thank you very much for your time.